Hi, I'm Wade Werner, and we're going to be rigging a bait caster. All right, you primarily have three types of line to load your bait caster with. It all depends on the technique, the strength of line you need, the type of lure you're going to throw. This particular rod and reel I am going to set up to throw a Carolina rig on. Everybody loves the old ball and chain. That's what this dude's going to get. I'm actually going to spool it with 50-pound braided line for sensitivity and strength and the low stretch aspect. So when you got those long casts, you can get a good hook set. I'm going to start by putting some backing on this reel. I'm actually going to use a monofilament backing to prevent the braided line from spinning on the spool when we spool it up. Alright, I've got my line run through the eyes of the rod. I'm going to thread it into the reel now. This is always a fun part, especially for guys with big hands. I'm going to run it through my line winder. Now here's the tricky part of the bait caster, is getting that line to wrap up around the spool to the top where you can get a hold of it. What I like to do is use these little vent holes in here. Place the line in lightly. Bring it back around to you. And now you're wrapped around your spool. From there, I'm going to proceed to tie this line tight to the spool. We're going to take the line and we're going to tie 2 overhand knots. There's 1, there's 2, and then we're going to tie a third one in the tag end of the line, like so. And that's going to be our stopper for the overall knot. We're going to nip off the tag end and then draw our line down tight till our stopper meets our 2 overhand knots inside the spool. And that's going to give us a solid connection to start spooling our backing line. I like to get enough backing to maybe put 2 layers of line. It's going to work back and forth with the line leveler, and it's going to give you a nice platform to put your braid on top of it. This is actually a Shimano Corrado reel, and it holds like a gazillion miles of line. Here's a shot of our backer. All right, on to phase 2. We got it back up. It's like the ceremonial ribbon cutting right there. Now we're ready for braid. I'm going to use 50-pound braid on this rig. It's got plenty of strength. I can throw Carolina rig on it, most definitely. I could also convert over, throw a frog on this, maybe a big heavy swim bait, top water. Do just about anything with 50-pound braid catching 5-pound bass. When that 10-pounder hits, I'm ready for them. All right, I've got my braid and I've got my backer line. We're going to go ahead and tie these together with a double uni knot. I like using the knot. It's simple, it's easy, it's effective, it works. Bring the 2 lines together, parallel to one another. We're going to double the backer line around, and we're going to make a loop, and then we're going to run it through itself 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to cinch that down to itself. And then we're going to turn this around and we're going to do the same thing with our braid. We're going to create a loop parallel to our backer line, and then we're going to run it through itself. 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And then we're going to draw that down tight. We're going to take those 2 knots and we're going to pull slowly and let them draw into one another until we got a nice tight union. And then we're going to remove our tag ends nice and close to the knot. Trim our braid off. There you have double uni knot. Loading the line winder. My little line winder, it helps hold the spool. It helps keep tension on the spool and keep it spooling off nice and even. Little spring tensioners I push in here. You can look them up, find them online. $7.99. It's a whole lot easier than your buddy holding the pencil and burning his fingers off while that thing's spooling line to you. And if he drops it or lets go, you got line all over the place. So it's a real easy way to spool rods by yourself and keep things nice and organized. Yeah, your line leveler that's going back and forth, that's making sure your line stays nice and flat and level, because if it stayed in one place, you have a big hump. So that's going to move your line back and forth, level it out, flatten it out. You want to fill your line up. I usually try to get to about an 1/8 inch, between a 1/16 and an 1/8 inch of the top of the spool. You don't want to go over that because it'll run out the sides of the spool, tangle up, or if your spool full of line gets too full, it'll actually drag inside the reel. There's not enough room for it. So that right there is a full spool. We're ready to start rigging up a Carolina rig. As far as bait cast reels go, the gear ratio to them, there's variables. You can get all the way down to 5 something to 1 retrieves. It's super slow, a lot of power. It's kind of your takeoff gear. It's gonna pull a truck out of the mud. There are certain techniques that guys prefer those. Typically your big deep crankbaits, things that you just need that extra power. It's not gonna wear you out trying to reel that in with a high-speed retrieve. I typically prefer to use a higher speed retrieve. This one happens to be an 8.5 to 1. It's bringing up a lot of line really quick for every crank of the handle. And I prefer that because if I get a bite and that fish is coming towards me and I got to reel up line to get to it, or I've got a fish on and it starts coming towards me, I want to keep up with it and get it in the boat as fast as I can. So that's my take on gear ratios. It's a little bit of a personal preference, but I prefer a higher speed retrieve. All right, we're going to tie this Carolina rig on this rod. I'm just going to break down a couple variables for a Carolina rig. Kind of old school way of doing it. You got your weight, you got a bead to protect the knot and to add a little sound, and you got a swivel to connect the main line to the leader line. You got bullet weights. They're great for Carolina rigging in grass. That bullet nose, it pulls through grass. It keeps it from glomming up and you bringing in a whole grass bed. And then you've got different forms of your egg weights. This is lead, this is steel, there's brass, there's tungsten, many different materials. These are better around rocks because they're rounder and they're not going to fall down in the crevices of the rock and get snagged as easy. So those are some different options. Behind the weight, you would end up putting a swivel and a bead. The bead is going to go on right behind the weight to protect the knot that's holding it to the swivel. And then the swivel is going to give you a connection point to change materials and tie on a leader to your lure. All right, here's the guts to our Carolina rig. All the different weight systems. We're going to use a all-in-one. This is the Ready Rig. This actually has a brass weight on it, a glass bead, and a little brass clacker. So when you're pulling it through the water, it's going to give you a lot of sound, attract the fish to come and check it out. This also makes it rigging a little bit simpler. You don't have to look for all these parts and pieces to thread on your main line. We're going to attach our main line to the front, we're going to attach our leader line to the back, and then this will run up to our hook and our bait. First thing I like to do is I like to add my leader line to the weight rig, simply because I like to use a polymer knot. And I use a polymer knot, I can pass it over the weight rig, tie my knot off, and then I can attach it to the main line. For leader line, I'm going to use 12-pound monofilament. I'm choosing to use monofilament in this case because it floats, and it's going to allow my bait to have a much more subtle action. When this thing is down on the bottom and I move it, that bait is going to rise up in the water and fall a lot slower to where the fish got a chance to react to it. So I'm going to take and double my line over. I am going to feed the line through this swivel. I'm going to take that loop and double it over, tie an overhand knot, and then through that loop I'm going to pass the entire weight rig, and then while holding the tag end and the main line, the main leader line that is, I'm going to snug this knot down. Broke it. Hey, we done good to get that far without having a technical difficulty. Let's do it again. So one thing I haven't shown on here, just roll with it. All right, we're going to take our line, we're going to double it over, and we're going to add it to the eye of this swivel. Pass that through. And then we're going to bring it around and we're going to just do an overhand knot with our loop we created. And then we're going to take this weight rig and we're going to pass it through that loop and then draw the whole thing down snug. And that is our knot right there. That is a polymer knot. It's strong, it's simple, it's efficient. I'll trim the tag end off. And then I like to set my Carolina rigs about 24 inches. So in this case, we're going to give us enough line to tie our hook on. I'm going to pull off roughly 30 inches of line here, and we'll cut that off. Now we've got something to start with. I'm going to take the whole weight rig and my main line. Here's my braid. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to double it up. I'm going to pass it through this eye on the front of the weight rig, and then I'm going to do an overhand knot. I'm going to proceed to take that loop I just created and pass the whole weight rig and the leader line through, and then I'm going to draw this down and snug that knot up at the front. And again, that's a polymer knot. Simple, efficient, effective, strong. I'll cut this tag end off. And we're rigged. All we got to do is add our bait now. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to add the bait to this rig. So we want to be 24 to 30 inches up the line. It's a good starting point. You can run these out to 7-foot leaders. You can run it down to a 12-inch leader. This is just where I like to start. I'm going to do the same thing, a polymer knot. I double my line over. I feed it through the eye of the hook. I'm going to loop it around and make an overhand knot out of it. Take the loop, pass my hook through it, and then I'm going to cinch down the knot to the eye of the hook. And again, simple, strong, efficient. Trim my tag end off, and I've got a Carolina rig. You can rig many different baits on here. You can throw craws, worms, minnow impersonating baits, whatever the case may be. I like to use something more like a creature or a lizard. They just tend to have a little bit of extra action and they move better in the water. On this, I'm going to be using a Bass Reaper changeling. Kind of a cute little bugger here. It's actually the happiest bait in the fishing industry. He's got a little happy face on him right there. The bass love that too. So we're going to take this guy, and we're going to put this hook right into the top of his head. There's a 3/0 EWG hook, light wire. I'm going to feed it back to the bend in the hook. We're going to turn the hook out through the side, twist it back, same way you would rig a Texas rig. We're going to have that hook laying straight down the body of the bait. And I'm going to mark this with my thumb where that bend lines up with the body so we can keep this straight. We're going to turn it back, push the hook through right there, come out the top side, and then I'm just going to back it up and skin hook that hook under the surface of that plastic. That way it makes it weedless, probably help keep it off of logs, dock posts, rock piles. It just doesn't have a sharp point out there to catch all that debris. But when you get a fish to bite that, he's got it in his mouth, and you pull, that hook will pop out the side of the bait and get him. Again, that's a full Carolina rig, ready to go catch some fish. And one other tip to add to this is when you're fishing the Carolina rig, just remember, when you get a bite and you feel them pulling on it, don't set the hook straight up in the air, because they're pulling on a flat plane. You reel up your slack and you pull to the side. You sweep to the side with a long sweeping hook set. You'll hook them every time. Once you got them on, it's game on. Get them in the boat. Hey y'all, that's a wrap. Thanks for watching. Go down in the comments, send a comment. Let me know what you think. Send any ideas you have my way. I love hearing those. I love, new techniques. Go out, maybe better what I'm doing. Make sure you like and subscribe. We'll see you on the flip side.
To stay up to date with all our videos, follow us here. Check out similar videos here.